Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Intel with Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds platform. I'm Jeff Mosher with Adam Kaplan from Inside the Birds. And of course, we're joined by Greg Cosell from NFL Films, the man who helps us break down all the college prospects leading up to the NFL draft. We've already covered with Greg Edge Pro. Did we do Edge prospects last time? I forget already who we covered last
Not yet.
time.
Not yet.
No, we'll do that soon. All right.
I'm with you, Jeff. I've just been grinding.
No,
The
I'm
rest
just
of the
kidding. We
weekend,
did
I
wide
feel like I'm
receivers
so
last
far
time.
behind, but that's the way it is every year, you know.
I like to keep you guys on your toes. We did wide
Mhm.
receivers last week in the first episode. This time we're going to do offensive linemen. Clearly, not only an important position for the Philadelphia Eagles, but anybody who watches NFL football knows offensive line play is very, very important. And not a lot of teams have great offensive line play. But Greg, we'll start with this. This is sort of considered a very bountiful draft for offensive linemen. A lot of good, versatile
Yeah.
offensive linemen that we're going to talk about today. Did that strike you as you watched a lot of offensive linemen, this pre-draft cycle, that there are a decent number of really good, versatile ones that
Yeah.
team will be, looking at?
I'm always fascinated by it, and I try to talk to some O-line coaches that I know because, a lot of guys play tackle in college, and then you always hear, well, they're going to be moved to guard. And, a few are obvious, just because you can see that either body type or they just don't have the kind of a foot movement. But others, I always wondered, how come they think they're a guard? Because I feel like they're tackles. And believe me, I'm certainly not an offensive line coach or guru, as far as teaching the position. But that's the kind of stuff that always fascinates me. But, at some point you're going to have to play with two tackles. So, I mean, some guys who play tackle in college are going to have to be tackles in the NFL.
And Greg, on that point, looking at the NFC East, every team has needs on the offensive line. Giants enormous, Washington enormous, Cowboys all of a sudden have two openings,
Yeah.
and the Eagles have one at right guard. So overall, just as an overview, you've looked at a lot of linemen. Do you feel like this is a strong draft on offensive line?
I do.
Okay.
I really do. I'm not necessarily good as teams are at saying, remembering last year and the year before and the year before, but I feel like there's a lot of players that I've watched that I feel like can play in the league. Now, then it becomes team specific, scheme specific, how they're coached. You guys both know, just like I do, that there are different offensive line coaches who are considered really good, have different ways of teaching. So, one of the things I always try to think about when I watch offensive linemen, and that's why I keep trying to learn, from many different people, is when I watch a guy, what can be coached and fixed versus what can't be coached and fixed. And different guys, different coaches will see that differently. Sometimes I watch a guy and go, boy, he's not very good at that. And I think to myself, hey, if I had an offensive line coach sitting here, he might say I can fix that in 2 weeks, or he might say that's not fixable and you got to work around it. That's always a hard thing to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think out of all the positions, that we talk about, maybe sometimes there are guys that surprise us the most from this position. I remember, and I agreed with you, coming out of college, Tyler Smith from the Cowboys.
Yeah.
There was not always great sync with the hand, but he's turned out to be a really good offensive lineman for
And
them.
he was good as a rookie, Jeff. And to be honest, it was hard not to like just his movement, but I did not think he was ready to play as a rookie. And obviously he did play and started as a rookie and did well.
Yeah. Yeah. So that actually tailors well into the first guy we're going to talk about, because I know I've already heard you describe Joe Alt from Notre Dame as someone who's been interesting for you to watch, because there are things that you see that you've wondered about in the next level, and yet he's considered one of the top, if not the top offensive tackle prospect in the draft. Give us your overall report on him.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he's and by the way, everything I'm about to say doesn't mean, that he may end up being a great player. I'm just telling you what I saw. I think that he's an athletic finesse tackle more than he is a physical power tackle. Now, in the run game, he is good. There's many run game snaps where you do see strong one-on-one point of attack blocking. No question that there have been many snaps where he controlled defensive ends with core and upper body strength. That does clearly exist on tape. I think he's a guy that plays with excellent body position, clean footwork and leverage in the run game, understands angles. He's got light feet. He's got really good balance. the thing that I kept struggling with, and by the way, I did have this conversation with a very highly respected O-line coach who agreed with me. I don't think that when it came to pass protection, he had a lot of strike power in his hands and throughout his body. And I thought his pass protection approach was more passive than aggressive. Now, again, you can still be a good player like that. It doesn't mean that I think he can't play. I just, to me, that's something over the years I feel you need to strike with your hands. Now, again, I don't know if that can be fixed. I don't know if it can't be fixed. Don't forget, this guy has not been an offensive tackle his whole life. He was a quarterback, believe it or not, when he was younger. He was a tight end. He has not been an offensive tackle since he's 12 years old. So I would say that in the run game, he clearly played with more physicality and power generation. And that showed up as the 2023 season progressed. I thought that really did show up. Now, the thing about all is he's a very consistent player. You start to really appreciate his high level of consistency. He does not really have bad snaps. So can he be coached with the striking of his hands? My guess is they're going to mess around with his stance as well, because he's so big that he ends up having like his ass up too high in his stance. And, you have to try to kind of get away from that. And that has to get fixed. And I think that can be fixed. But, he's got size, he's got length. He clearly has plus athleticism. He's efficient snap after snap. But I think he could have some bad snaps early on against the quality edge pass rushers until he, gets a few things figured out in pass pro.
Yeah. Greg, 6'8" and 5/8", which is almost historic. We know Jonathan Ogden was huge. But, and I get Ogden was bigger physically in terms of width, but do you ever have any issue with guys who are over 6'8" of being fluid movers? Has this been an issue, or has he moved pretty well for his size?
I think he moves well. I think the 6'8" part does impact his stance, and I don't know if that can be corrected or not. But yeah, he's a fluid mover. He's not Joe Thomas. And I think a lot of people are talking about him as if he's that kind of player, but he's not Joe Thomas in terms of his movement. Joe Thomas moved like he was just, taking a walk in the park. Alt's not quite like that, although he does move well. As I said, overall, I think he's a good prospect. The strike power is just something, as I kept watching him, I couldn't get out of my head, because he doesn't really strike people in pass pro.
Greg, moving on, one guy that scouts we've spoken to really, really like the versatility, the skill set, is the kid from Oregon State, whose name I'm going to try not to butcher, Taliesi Fuaga. I hope I got that correct. Offensive tackle, played out there at Oregon State, had a nice year. What have you seen from him?
He was one of my most fun watches, Jeff, because I knew nothing about him at all. And those are the guys I love to watch the most. Now, there were times watching him, I thought that he could have been the best O-tackle prospect in the class with his size, strength. He's a plus athlete. He's a nasty demeanor guy. He's another guy that I think some people will look at guard, just because he's not. I guess I thought he was a better athlete than some people I've spoken to. But some think his athleticism and range in pass protection is not exactly what you want. But to me, it's good enough. Now, some might see him as similar to the North Carolina State kid from a few years ago, who's with Carolina, who hasn't really been a great left tackle in his first 2 years in the league. And a lot of people thought he should have been a guard as well. But in the run game, Fuaga is a powerful, competitive, take no prisoners menace. I mean, this guy moves D linemen and second level defenders. He drove them into the ground. He was really good as a reach blocker, cutting off the backside and climbing to the second level. I thought when they did pin pull and he pulled outside, there were times I thought he looked like a smaller man with light feet and easy movement. The thing about pass pro, which I liked, and again, he's playing in the Pac-12 and he's not playing against, Nick Bosa. But I thought his balance and body control were phenomenal. He was rarely not on balance and control of the rep, regardless of his pass set technique. He was rarely ever on the ground. That struck me as really interesting. And I watched a lot of tape, but I mean, he was rarely ever on the ground. So I really liked his tape a lot. And keep in mind that Oregon State was really kind of a pro offense. They ran the ball. The quarterback was under center. You saw him, play in both a 2-point stance and a 3-point stance. He's got a ton of experience in both, which is a bigger thing than people might think. Guys who never play in a 3-point stance and fire off the ball the way a 3-point stance requires, you've got to learn that. That's not something that you just automatically say can be done with no problem.
Let's stay in the Pac-12, and a guy that he may look like a guard because he's not really tall. He's under 6'4", but he's got length. That's Troy Fautanu for Washington. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, he was one of my favorite watches. It's funny, these two guys, I loved watching him. I didn't know anything about him either. This guy is super, super athletic. I mean, he's got excellent length. He's got really long arms. Yet his build on tape, he almost looks more compact and stout, even though he is 6'4". But he does have 34+ inch arms. He's a twitched up, sudden explosive mover, really active athletic feet, really good understanding of how to use his hands to maximize his long arms, maintain separation and control as a pass protector. You don't see a lot of college left tackles or tackles use their hands and arms the way Fautanu does. He was a really, really fun watch. And I thought as a run blocker, he played with strength, he played with power, he had balance, he had body control, he had a competitive demeanor. Again, not being an O-line coach, I believe he can play tackle in the league, but I know a lot of people see him as a guard.
Could Greg, have you spoke to anyone who also thought he could move to center because of his athleticism?
I haven't, but again, it's not as if I've spoken to 25 O-line coaches, so
right.
Maybe so. I don't know, but he's just was a really fun watch at left tackle because he is really twitched up for a tackle, and I loved his hand usage. I mean, he had that swipe where pass rushers would try to get the one-arm stab or their hands into him, and he would just swipe them down, and guys would just fall down in front of him. Now, that won't happen in the NFL quite like that, as we know, but the point is that he really had an understanding and a recognition that using your hands and your arms is critical when you're a pass protector.
Got it. Let's move to Alabama and talk about J.C. Latham, a guy who's built kind of differently than most offensive tackles. And again, you've heard some people believe that maybe guard could be his spot. How did you see him?
Yeah, Latham's a fascinating guy. That's where speed to power pass rushers went to die. I mean, he just stoned speed to power. He's 6'6", 342 with 35+ inch arms. So again, the way he's built, but he is 6'6". It's not like he's short. So I don't know. There's a really powerful feel to his game. I think he moves well. He is kind of mean and nasty. He's another fun guy to watch. I mean, this guy has size. He has mass. In the run game, he came off the ball low. He generated force and power. He converted strength to power. Keep in mind, power is kind of strength in motion. He kept his feet moving, sustaining, and finishing. And again, in pass pro, I wouldn't say he's the most athletic pass protector you'll ever see, but he's certainly not lacking in that area. And as I said, when it was speed to power, he just stoned guys.
Wow. Boy, it sounds like so far you're loving these guys. I mean, based on your tape study.
Yeah, I mean, the guys we're talking about, these guys, they're pretty good. Their tape's good. Let's put it that way. I mean, their college tape is really good. You know, obviously, there's a transition and a projection, but their college tape's good.
Let's stay on the guys who we project to go in the first round, and another guy who's really intriguing is Fashanu from Penn State, who's a tackle. What are your thoughts on him?
Another guy who was really, really good when it came to speed to power. He just stopped guys. And he's got the prototypical height, weight, build profile that you look for. Pass protection is his greatest strength as you transition him to the league. He's got a smooth, efficient kick slide. He's got clean footwork. He's got really good body position and balance. He seals the outside arc. He cuts off inside counters. He's got really calculated hand strikes. And his play strength and grip strength to anchor, as I said, he doesn't give ground. He absorbs and engulfs speed to power. So he probably needs some work as a run blocker. But when you talk about pass pro, and I think that's normally the number one thing that teams look for in this league, I'm not saying that you want a bad run blocker, and he's by no means bad at it. There's no question you saw on tape flashes of strength and power to drive and sustain and finish blocks in the run game, because there's natural power within this guy. But I would say at this moment in time, pass protection would be his strength.
Did anything stand out while watching his tape, Greg? And I don't know which games you watched, but him versus Ohio State and Michigan versus him versus other teams, was there any variance you saw there?
No, I mean, okay. No, not really. Not that I can recall. Yeah. I mean, look, everybody's going to have a bad snap here and there, but I mean, it's not like he got, wow, this guy dominated him. No, that didn't happen.
Okay. God, there was a feeling that the more intricate defenses that stunt and twist a lot gave him at times a little bit, and they're really only.
Well, that's a different question. Now you're talking about.
Well, those are the only two teams that really do that kind of stuff.
Now you're talking about awareness and what we often call accelerated vision to recognize and react to stunts and pressures, which probably he needs probably a little work in that area. Yeah. But I know. I mean, in terms of one-on-ones, no.
Got it. Interesting kid at Duke that we hear a lot about, Graham Barton, as far as, again, I guess versatility or where he would where you'd play him. What do you think of Graham Barton, Greg?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about him at center.
Yeah.
Which is probably fair, because he kind of has the body frame and the movement traits of an inside player more than a tackle. I didn't love him at tackle. I think that probably will fit better inside. He's one of those guys. I don't want to say he was similar to Skoronski from a year ago. And I know people might have a negative view of Skoronski being on that Tennessee Titan O-line, but Skoronski also had an appendectomy last year, lost 25 pounds, and had about 7 weeks in a row where he just couldn't play the way he needed to play. So if people who are close observers of that think, well, he wasn't great, that's one of the reasons. But I just see this guy much more as either a guard or a center, and I'm hearing a lot that people are clearly projecting him and transitioning him at the center position, where my guess is he would be very good.
And obviously you don't typically take a center in the first round, but positional versatility is something that's super key at this level.
Yeah, and again, he's a guy that, unless you truly believe he's your starting center, if you draft him, wherever it is you draft him at him, that you plug him in as your starter, it's a great thing for a team that if you feel he could line up at center, guard, and tackle, if he's not going to be your starting center or starting guard, then he's a really important player.
Got value, right? Clearly wouldn't have value. A guy that's really intriguing because he's got incredible size, and I know there's some upside in there. There's some rawness to him, but Amarius Sims from Georgia. Yeah, I kind of figured you would have that reaction. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, Sims only started 8 games. So
it's Mims, by the way, right? Amarius Mims?
Amarius Mims, Georgia.
Yep.
So I went back and watched the Ohio State game from 2022, that college playoff game where he played the whole game. And then I watched 3 games this year where he started and played pretty much every snap in all 3, pretty much. This guy is truly, truly one of the most fascinating prospects in the entire draft.
There you go.
I mean, this guy has rare size for the position, and boy, he has a higher level traits profile. He's got 36-plus-inch arms, okay? This guy's 6'8", 340. He ran just over a 5 flat 40, which, again, that doesn't mean a lot. We know about 40-yard dashes and what they mean and how little they can mean. But this guy, you couldn't make the argument, okay? And again, I'm not presenting myself as a genius when it comes to O-line play. You couldn't make the argument that this guy's traits when he's playing at his best, and there's not that many examples of that this guy could be the best tackle prospect in the draft, but he's hurt all the time, and he got hurt again at the combine. So, you have to decide how you feel about that. But this guy has outstanding reps in the run game and in pass protection. He's got ridiculous length and mass, really long arms. He can control the edge in pass protection. Pass rushers almost never clear the arc on him. But at times he did show some sluggish feet when he had to react to counters inside. But boy, is he an enticing combination of size, power, movement, unbelievable build, elite length. The flashes are really, really high level flashes.
Wow. So Greg, and I know there's no way to know this, but because he's just has not played enough, but yet his traits are ridiculous. The hands, by the way, are over 11. He has a big hands draft.
Yeah,
at tackle. It's to the point where, like, I guess you have to, because the draft is always about projection. You just don't. Will he be ready week 1, 6, and a year from now? I guess that's the question.
Well, that's why it's not likely he'll be. Unless look. Here's what we never know, Adam. And this is the fun of the draft. If you believe, if your O-line coach believes that this guy is truly an elite prospect, that with his coaching, that in a year or 2 years, maybe not this year, that this guy is a top 3 tackle in the league. And by the way, his traits suggest that is possible. Then you might draft him 13th. And I don't even know who drafts 13th, but but if you believe that this guy is just a good player, and he, with his injury history and not a lot of experience, then maybe you see him as a 2nd round pick. And, now you get into all that kind of stuff, which is impossible to know.
Sure.
Yeah. It's sort of going to be fascinating to see where he goes, Greg.
This guy, I mean, you watch him in the 4 games that I did, and obviously I watch every snap, and I'm watching the coaching tape, and boy, this guy there are just reps that are so impressive.
Wow. Well, let's stay on that level. Maybe a guy who's also very big, athletic, has had some injuries, and also doesn't have a ton of experience, more than Mims, but not a lot, is the kid from Oklahoma, Tyler Guyton.
Yeah, another guy's a 1-year starter. Another guy that's really, really athletic. I mean, he's another massive guy, 6'8", 322, 34+ inch arms. Again, outstanding athleticism, impressive mover. You have to remember one thing, that this guy, he's only a full-time starter for 1 year, doesn't even have much experience playing the position. You know what he was in high school? And for 1 year at Alabama, he was an H-back. So now he's offensive tackle. Yeah.
Wow.
So this guy is just naturally athletic. I mean, he's got an easy kick slide. He bends his knees. He's just got good body movement. I mean, there's really a lot to like about him. The question is, do you feel, after 14 starts at right tackle in his college career, is he ready to play? Because he does have technique and execution issues at times. He has that issue that does concern you at times, which unfortunately we saw too often with Evan Neal when he came out, and he was the 6th or 7th pick in the draft.
Yeah,
he has that issue at times, not as severe as Neal had, but where he struggled at times to stop at the top of his pass set. And that leads to balance and body control issues to redirect. And, again, he's athletic enough to get that figured out, but, he doesn't have a lot of experience. So, again, now it's an O-line coach saying, hey, I can fix that, or, oh, I'm a little worried about that.
The next guy on our board is a guy that I've been hearing a lot about, should go in the first round, somewhere between 20 and 32. That's Jordan Morgan from Arizona. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, Jordan Morgan's an interesting guy. He's had some injuries, but he's another actually fun guy to watch. He's got really good size too. Oh, well, I should, compared to the other guys, he's a midget. He's 6'5" and 311. His arm length is not exactly what you want. It's under 33. But it's he does, but overall on tape he looks big. Will his shorter arms be a problem for some O-line coaches? I think you guys know it will be. There are some O-line coaches that see that as something, hey, that's a problem. But he clearly possesses the light feet and fluid athletic movement you want to see at the left tackle position. And he's played left tackle his whole career. He started 33 games in his final 3 seasons. at left tackle. So, he's a plus athlete. He's got light feet. He's got really good balance and lateral movement. He competes as a run blocker. He's got play strength. He's got heavy hands. I liked him. I didn't know another guy I knew nothing about. I actually watched him last summer too, believe it or not. I don't know why, but I watched him this year as well. I could see just what you said, Adam. I could see a team really liking his traits a lot. Now, again, I can't tell you that he's a day one starter, but he does have 33 college starts, so it's not as if he's new at the position.
The key, Greg, is his ability to play inside. I understand he's been a tackle.
Yeah.
But we've learned of covering this thing now for 25 years. Yes, it looks like a guy should only be a tackle. I remember when Todd Hermans, when we're talking to Todd, when Andy Reid and whoever made the decision to move him to guard. I mean, he didn't look like a guard. He was a tackle, very tall.
Right.
But they told him put weight on, take it off, put it on.
And that's what you just don't know. That's why we started this whole thing. I talked about all these guys possibly moving inside, and I just don't know the answer to that. You know.
Gotcha.
All right, let's stick with the inside theme. This guy is definitely an inside player. And Greg, there are some times where I'll watch a prospect's tape and just knowing the league, I'm like this guy would be a perfect blank, like fill in the blank, right? Just because you know the history of the organization. When I watch Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon, sometimes I think, man, he's a Steeler. Like the Steelers always make those athletic, tough, nasty guys. What do you see in Jackson Powers Johnson?
Well, he is that guy. He's not a great athlete, by the way, but you don't have to be a great athlete to play center, although that could bother some people. That's not his game. His game is built on power. He's got really strong, powerful, heavy hands. He's a mean, nasty guy. He's got a short, quick, compact, powerful punch. It often changed the path of pass rushers, and he was able to maintain balance and a strong base. His game is a strong man's game. That's the way he plays. He's got active, violent, effective hand usage. He's got strength and power in the run game. He's got a really competitive finishing mentality. He's probably the kind of guy that's a tempo setter on your O-line, and you know how O-line coaches like that. He plays with an attitude and a swagger. But he's not a great athlete. He's again, now it comes down to individual coaches and how they feel about that.
Right. So you're talking about someone who's more, say, Richie Incognito than Jason Kelsey. We're not
without question. Without question. But you know how coaches love those guys because they're nasty. They want that with they don't want their O-line, to be choir boys.
I like that. Just real quick, Greg, have you seen the Yale tackle? I wasn't sure if you've seen
I have not. No.
Okay. All right, cool. Because he's a guy that I know he's going to be a third-day pick, most likely. He could go as early as the third, but we'll talk more about him. How about I know there's a guy you wanted to talk about. I'll let you pronounce his last name, from BYU.
Oh, that would be Kingsley Suamataia.
There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah. He's another really interesting guy. I mean, there's a lot of really good O tackles or I should say O linemen, because we have no idea,
Sure.
And I would say that he possesses all the athletic and physical traits to develop into a starting O tackle. He's almost 6'5". He's 326. He's got long arms, really good athletic testing measurables, by the way. I would say his transition might take a little time. I'm not sure he's a day one starter, but he's got really good length. He's got easy movement skills and foot quickness, bends his knees well, got really good balance. I thought he showed really good athleticism and loose hips to execute some difficult run blocks, reach blocks, climbs to the second level. I liked him. I mean, it'll be interesting to see, where he goes. He was a big time recruit. He initially went to Oregon and he transferred to BYU. Now this guy became a starter. He played right tackle in 2022 and left tackle this past season in 2023. So he has experience at both.
Where do you think he's someone who can project inside at 6'5", 320, 326?
I guess he could, that's the thing. I mean, could he? Sure. I mean, you're talking 6'5", 326. I mean, I see him more just because of the easy movement as a tackle, but
Right.
doesn't make me right.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Let's also talk about someone the Eagles had on their list for a visit to the NovaCare complex. You get 30 of those. He's from TCU, the offensive lineman named Brandon Coleman.
Yeah. I like this kid a lot. I mean, 6'4.5", 313. Now he predominantly played left tackle his final 2 seasons, but he's got meaningful experience at guard. So you could easily see him as a guard. He does have really long arms, however. I think he's got length, he's got strength, he's got a powerful grip. I thought he was a good tackle in college. But like I said, he could easily be at guard. And when he played guard, he was a really good pass protector as well. I really like this kid. I mean, as a run blocker, I thought that he had point of attack power. I thought he displaced D linemen. I thought he had more than functional movement to climb effectively to the second level. He's someone I didn't know much about. Another guy I didn't know much about at all. I really like this tape a lot.
Nice. Well, that is a decent amount of offensive linemen there from inside to out who will be available in all the rounds of the NFL draft. I mean, it looks like you can get a good player here, second, third round, day 2.
And that's, it's funny you say that because it's one of those drafts. I feel like teams that need O-linemen, I think Tennessee, they're the 7th.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We know they need O-linemen. Okay. We know that. But I got to tell you, I mean, and I'm not smarter than anybody else, believe me, but if Malik Neighbors or Marvin Harrison is sitting there at 7, I know they need O-linemen, but I'm taking one of those guys, and I'm taking an O-lineman in the second.
Higher grade. Greg, I'm so glad you said that, because the thing that, for those of us who have to do mock drafts, you always have to remember it's about the future and projection.
Yeah.
Get 4 to 6 years down the line, who's the best player? Marvin Harrison's the best player for this draft. Now,
but the point is, whether he is or not, those 2 receivers, and I'm not going to sit here and say I never use the word generational ever because it's pointless.
Sure.
But they are really, really high level receiver,
higher graded players,
right?
And and they have Bill Callahan now as their O-line coach, and I'm not saying that he's automatically going to turn chicken what into chicken salad, but you have to feel like with the quality and the depth of offensive linemen in this draft that you can't pass up Neighbors or Harrison to take Joe All. Not in my opinion.
Agreed.
Dead wrong, and others might disagree with me, and that's okay. You guys know me well enough to know that I like to think reasonable people can disagree and have a conversation about it. Sure. But I just don't think you could pass up Harrison or Neighbors if they're sitting there at 7.
Right.
Quite frankly, I'm not sure I'd pass up Brock Bowers, but that's, again, just my opinion.
Okay, interesting.
Sounds like a tease for a future the Intel with Greg Cosell when we do pass catchers, which you never know, could be the next episode. No, we've already done that. I'm just kidding. All right, so we've got wide receivers in the books and now offensive linemen, and can't wait for the next one. That's going to do it for this episode of the Intel with Greg Cosell. For Greg Cosell and Adam Kaplan, I'm Jeff Mosher. Catch you on the next one.